All right, breaking news. You're looking at these live pictures. Protests on the streets of Cairo, not far from the United States Embassy, where rioters tore down the American flag yesterday. We're going to have much more on that in a minute. Meanwhile, flags at the White House and at the Capitol flying at half-staff today in memory of the United States Ambassador Christopher Stevens and 3 other Americans killed last night at the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya. President Obama has ordered that flags fly at half-staff across the United States and at embassies around the world until Sunday night. I'm Wolf Blitzer in for Pmorgan. Earlier today, the Republican challenger Mitt Romney blasted President Obama for what he characterized as, quote, an apology for America's values over the storming of the U.S. Embassy in Cairo.
An apology for America's values is never the right course.
The president fired right back in an interview tonight with CBS News.
Governor Romney seems to have a tendency to shoot first, name later. And as president, one of the things I've learned is you can't do that. It's important for you to make sure that the statements that you make are backed up by the facts and that you've thought through the ramifications before you make them.
And there are late-breaking developments. Right now, 2 U.S. Navy warships are moving toward the coast of Libya, and 50 Marines are on the ground in Tripoli right now. CNN's Jomana Karacha is there. She's on the ground for us. She's joining us via broadband. Ian Lee is in Cairo for us. Jomana, let me start with you. What is the latest in Libya?
Well, Wolf, what we're hearing here from government officials is that they have started an investigation into this incident to try and figure out what happened. We have heard conflicting reports from Libyan officials on what actually went down yesterday at the consulate in Benghazi, but strong words of condemnation coming from the Libyan government senior officials today, saying that this is not representative of the Libyan people, of the new Libya. This is not how they want to treat their guests. They are trying to reassure the United States and the international community that they will do their best and that they will protect foreign interests here in Libya. But this is going to be something hard to believe. This is not the first attack on foreign interests here and on the U.S. consulate specifically. So we're going to have to see what action is really taken by the Libyan government that really has not been able.
All right, we're losing our connection, unfortunately, with Jomana Karacha. We're going to get back to you. Jomana, stand by. Let me go to Ian Lee right now, though. He's in Cairo watching what's going on. Ian, while we speak, there were protesters. They're on the streets not far from the United States Embassy in Cairo, near Tahrir Square. The police are there. These are live pictures our viewers are seeing right now. What is going on in Cairo?
Well, Wolf, what's going on is we have a few hundred protesters and the police battling it out. And this has started a little bit around midnight, a little after midnight. The protesters and the police, tried to break down a barricade that the police were putting up. The police responded with tear gas. Everything went chaotic from there. We have police and protesters throwing rocks at each other. What we're hearing are dozens of protesters are injured. 6 police officers are also injured in the clashes. But really what we see is a stalemate between the protesters and the police. Neither side is going to give up. The police really can't give up because if they do, the protesters will go to the embassy. But the protesters don't seem to be willing to give up either. So right now, a real stalemate on the streets of Cairo.
Have they stepped up the Egyptian military, the Egyptian police, security surrounding that huge U.S. embassy compound in Cairo? Because those guys were invisible yesterday when these protesters, this mob stormed that 50-foot wall, went in there and started burning the American flag.
They definitely have stepped up their presence around the embassy. Yesterday, we didn't see any vehicles, any of the police vehicles that they typically use during crowd control. These kind of vehicles, that if you see the video, you'll see these vehicles drive toward the protesters. The protesters will scatter. They'll shoot some tear gas into the protesters, trying to scatter them. But the protesters will regroup and go right back at the police. But right now there seems to be a buffer zone between the two, rocks flying, and once in a while you'll have either group surge.
Ian Lee, stand by. President Obama speaking right now to a group in Las Vegas. I want to just listen and hear what he's saying.
And we want to send out heartfelt prayers to their loved ones who grieve today. You know, it's a reminder that the freedoms we enjoy, sometimes even the freedoms we take for granted, they're only sustained because there are people like those who were killed, who are willing to stand up for those freedoms, who are willing to fight for those freedoms, in some cases to lay down their lives for those freedoms. So tonight, let's think of them and thank them. As for the ones we lost last night, I want to assure you we will bring their killers to justice.
President of the United States making a strong vow right there, much more on what he just said, what it means. Stand by. I want to bring in the Middle East expert, Robin Wright, right now. She was a longtime friend of Ambassador Stevens. She's a joint fellow at the U.S. Institute of Peace and the Woodrow Wilson Center here in Washington. Also, Tim Romer is here, the former U.S. ambassador to India, former foreign policy advisor to the Obama campaign. Thanks to both of you for coming in. When the President of the United States, Robin, says justice will be served, these killers will be brought to justice, that says to me the U.S., if the Libyan government doesn't find them, the U.S. will find them, arrest them, detain them, and kill them if necessary. That's what it says to me. What does it say to you?
Well, I think the United States is already playing a role in sending FBI forces to help investigate, find out who is responsible. But I think the thing that was so striking about Chris was that he would have wanted them to be brought to justice under a rule of law that reflected the transition Libya has made from a truly autocratic state where justice was never guaranteed to one where you could see these people tried in a fair courtroom and sentenced.
You knew him well. For how many years did you know him?
Oh, at least 20. I mean,
20 years.
We go back a long way, and he was a wonderful man who had a sense of the streets as well as the elites, and that despite the security restrictions that limit so many diplomats, he was always willing to go out. And he saw Libya through all three transition phases. 2 years under Muammar Gaddafi, then as the liaison chief in Benghazi for a year, and then as ambassador to Tripoli.
He was the liaison from the United States government to the rebels who were fighting Gaddafi, and he worked hard to get rid of Gaddafi through these rebels.
Absolutely. And he has reached out, and he really knows the streets, the Libyan people, in the same way he's known in every place I've ever known him. He's been one who's really been engaged, and when he looks for what role the United States should play, listens to what the people on the ground are saying, not just...
And he was fluent in Arabic, a career diplomat, spent 20 years in the Foreign Service, and so you knew him, so this is important. What would he want the United States to do towards Libya in the aftermath of what has happened, this tragic killing of him and 3 of his colleagues?
I think he'd say do not waver, that the United States was on a course to try to help facilitate a very traumatic transition in many of these countries. And he was doing things in trying to help establish the rule of law, helping disarm the militias, promoting the kind of development or the access to technology and know-how so that Libya could build what is a potentially very rich country into something that's been desperate for decades. And this is a tremendous contribution he had made. And that's why he's a loss, not just to the American people and the State Department, but also to the Libyan people. Yeah,
our heart goes out to him. I interviewed the Libyan ambassador to the United States earlier today, Ali Aujali, and he was almost crying just talking about him. Tim Romer, you were the United States ambassador to India. You served in the Obama administration, former member of Congress from Indiana. You know, people don't realize how dangerous it can be to be a foreign service officer in a country like Libya, for example, or even in Egypt right now. You served in India, where it's relatively quiet.
Well, that's not true. After Mumbai, several terrorist attacks have taken place in India. There's high level of security.
But they didn't go after the U.S. Embassy in Mumbai.
They went after Americans in Mumbai.
They went after at hotels.
Correct.
Yeah.
And 6 Americans were killed there. But, you know, what you were talking to Robin about, Wolf, I've been blessed and fortunate enough in my life to have a close family, but also have circles of professional families. Congress, 9/11 Commission, ambassador family. It it breaks all of our hearts to see what happened to Chris. Chris was a fine public servant, somebody who worked so hard to bring democracy and freedom to Libya. I think Lincoln once wrote to a mother that he thought had lost several sons in the Civil War, "This is too heavy a burden to hoist on the altar of freedom." Chris really worked for that freedom for the people of Libya, served us well, and I think the president's doing the right thing. You just heard him say it's a time for grieving, for prayer, it's a time to make sure our people overseas are safe, and it's a time to seek justice. And I'll remind you, Wolf, that when the president was doing the debates as a Senate candidate in 2008, he was ridiculed for saying, "I'm going to go get bin Laden wherever I find him, even if it's in Pakistan." And people said, "You can't do it." He did it. He will go
and you're
after
working
it.
hard to get him re-elected right now, and the Obama campaign relies on you on a lot of these foreign policy issues. But the question is, you were in the 9/11 Commission. Does this look, I mean, these two events, in Cairo, storming of the U.S. Embassy, in Benghazi, the U.S. diplomatic mission there, storming on the 11th anniversary of 9/11, does it look like, A, these were coordinated, and do you feel it has the fingerprints of some sort of al-Qaeda-related organization out there?
Short answer is, Wolf, we don't know enough yet. There are certainly affiliates of al-Qaeda in Libya. There are certainly a lot of arms and groups that have access to arms in Libya right now. I think it's a very serious time to investigate this, get at all the facts, keep politics out of this. You know, I was talking to you off camera about 9/11 and what happened after 9/11. I know Mayor Giuliani is going to be on your show later. There were no accusations and no politics involved in that for weeks and months afterwards. We wanted to heal. We wanted to take care of the families. We wanted to grieve.
So you're criticizing Mitt Romney for making that statement.
No. I am saying in America, there is a time to grieve and pray and take care of the families of these 4 people that died. That's this time now. And for the president, as our commander-in-chief, to secure our embassy and consulates there and other places in the world with Secretary Clinton, to make sure if warships need to be in the area, to take those proactive steps, to make sure Ann Patterson in Egypt has all she needs.
She's the U.S. ambassador.
She's the U.S. ambassador in Cairo. And to seek justice and make sure this does not happen again.
Bottom line is, you're saying that Mitt Romney should have remained silent. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not getting into politics, Wolf. I'm saying after 9/11, we did not enter into politics, and we should not enter politics now.
Your book, Rock the Casbah, an excellent book. You believe al-Qaeda had a role in this one way or another, Robin?
Well, it looks like extremists may have been involved in the attack in Benghazi. It looks like Salafi, the ultra-conservative force that's just emerging into politics, may have been the leaders of the attack in Cairo. What we have to understand is that the vast majority of people in both of these countries have signaled they want no part of violence. When you look at a country like Egypt with 85 million people, you had 2,000 of them maybe at the embassy yesterday, 500 in Tahrir Square tonight. In Libya, again, a minority. That the vast majority, tens of millions of people, are actually sending a very different message, and that is we don't want to be involved in extremism. They're putting their lives on the line and try to bring about democratic change, a place where there is a sense of justice and participation for all.
Robin Wright, thanks for coming in. Ambassador Romer, thanks to you as well.
Great to see you, Wolf.
When we come back, America's mayor, as he's called, Rudy Giuliani, he led New York City through the worst terror attack in its history. Tonight, he will weigh in on the latest deadly attack in Libya.